Hello, Millwall fans. Paul Eiffel here. It's time for Chat with Chaps.
Hello, Millwall fans, and welcome back to another episode of Chat with Chaps. No game this weekend. We're playing Monday night against Dagenham Redbridge, so this is an episode to tide you over. We all want to know more about the new man in the Millwall dugout, the new head coach, not manager, Mr. Alex Neil. He's been in charge now for 2 games, 1 draw, 1 loss. And to tell us more about Alex Neil are 2 people that know more about him than I certainly do. And I'm really pleased to say that I'm joined by 2 Preston fans. First of all, I introduce Pete. Pete, welcome to the show, mate.
Cheers, thanks, mate.
Thank you for coming on. And George, welcome to the show, George.
Evening, mate. Good to be on. Thanks for having us.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. And Millwall fans, I thought it was a really good opportunity to talk to 2 people, as I say, that will know Alex and what he did at Preston in a lot more detail than any of us would. I think, Alex Neil has gone on record to say that Preston is his blueprint, if he was to say which side represents him and his style the most. I'm really, really happy to be joined by 2 people heavily involved in the club, obviously diehard fans, but George works for the Lancashire Post and Pete has worked at Preston in a few different capacities. So really keen to get into it. So I'm going to go straight in, Pete, and ask you the first question. Alex Neil was with you for 4 years, 2017 to 2021. How would you summarise how he managed to progress the club forward, both in terms of on the pitch and off the pitch during his time there?
I think it's always a difficult job at Preston North End for any manager with the budget and the club structure and various other things. But do you know what? He did such a good job. He had 73 points in his first season with us, which, set us up really, really well. And, he's had success at other clubs, but managing Preston, like I say, is a kind of different challenge. And I think he took to it really, really well. And the development in himself, the development in the players, I think they took the club to a different level. It's probably a bit of a push, but he certainly progressed the club while he was there and himself as a manager as well. And we saw that season on season.
And you used the word there, manager. And from an outsider looking in, he's always struck me as a manager, someone that's kind of involved in everything as opposed to just, sorting out the team for the day-to-day and taking training. He's not that at Millwall. He's head coach and he'll work with a director of football. Did you ever see Alex going down that route? Can you see that working?
I think maybe. The only thing I can think is that he's learned from past experiences, just to focus on the coaching side rather than getting too involved in the other stuff. It's a difficult job at any club in the Championship, so I think he's maybe just wants to concentrate on being that head coach really, and just having sole responsibility for the day-to-day football side of things as opposed to anything else.
And is he renowned as a good coach? In terms of did you see over that 4 years a clear style of play that you could see was being exercised on the pitch that was part of the DNA that Alex was trying to put to Preston?
Yeah, I don't think he fully got there with what he wanted, because we probably lacked, come to the end, we probably lacked 2-3 players that were really going to push us on. So I don't think we ever saw the end product of what he wanted, but we could certainly see the progression in what he was working towards. He developed the players. Not many of the players that worked under him would say a bad thing about him, and I'm sure George will talk about what he was like in the press and stuff. But as a man, he came across really, really well in all the interviews, and as I say, the players that I spoke to that worked under him were nothing but complimentary about him.
Yeah, and he's had obviously 2 games with a point at Sheffield Wednesday, which, to be honest, we didn't deserve at all. They hit the bar 3 times and missed a penalty, but we'll take it. And we lost at home to Oxford to Gary Rowett, which we just knew would happen. But after both games, he spoke, I think, very, very well. You know, he had a really nice way of basically acknowledging it wasn't great, but also calming you down at the same time. And also being really honest in the sense of what he's working with and how he needs to utilise the players he's got. So it does come across as a very well-grounded and an honest chap. So, George, I'll come to you. Is that... No, actually, I'll change it. First of all, what was your initial reaction when you saw that Alex was coming to Millwall? Did you think it was a natural good fit?
I did, yeah. I think he said in one of his last interviews before going back into work that he wanted to walk in his next club and see something similar to what he had at Preston, which was a real blend of youth, but also experience. And I think maybe Millwall have got more experience than the latter, but I think he'll see that. I think he sees a similar size club. I think he'll expect to get time there. And I think Millwall fans probably want to see a lot of similar things to what Preston fans want to see, a hard-working, aggressive team that might lack quality at times, but just leaves it all out there. And I think he'll kind of resonate in that regard. Obviously, moving down to London's a bit of a change for him. I think he was quite settled up north, but no, I wasn't surprised to see him take that job.
And do you, genuine question, do you know if he's actually moving to London or is he going to do the commute? Do you know? Either of you know about that?
I'd be surprised. I don't know, but I'd be surprised if he's not moving. And then I think he might travel back up, maybe, I don't know, one or two times a week if he can. But no, I'd imagine he'll move down there. I think when he went to Sunderland, he maybe stayed there a few nights and then came back, but a bit further, isn't it? So yeah, I'd imagine he'll immerse himself in the area.
Yeah, and he talked about, there's an interview he did with Gab Sutton, and he talked about wanting to go to, it had to be for him the right club at the right time, and he wanted a project, and he certainly got that at Millwall, I can assure you. Question then, George, is you had the pleasure of interviewing him many times. You know, what's he like as a character?
Always found him a really interesting listen. I think you touched on it after your game against Wednesday, but if you had a bad result, I thought he'd always, by the time you'd listen to him afterwards, you'd always feel better. He'd explain what's gone wrong, maybe point things out you've not seen as a fan or myself, reporter. I think his tactical insight is outstanding. Really, really knows what he's doing, knows the strengths of other teams, knows how to set a team up. I think his players said to him, some of them said in interviews that when they crossed the white line, they just knew exactly what was coming their way, exactly what they had to do. And I can only imagine that's all you'd ask for really as a player. But yeah, no, as a person, I think he's intense, but I think he's authentic, extremely hardworking, passionate, who wants to win. And yeah, just works really, really hard. But I always found him a really good interviewee, really. I thought he was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting him once, not football related at all, and he did come across like he had the time to talk to me. I was a Millwall fan. He was the Preston manager at the time. You'd just beaten us 3-1, and I managed to bump into him at the boxing, and he was very complimentary about us at the time. So obviously was quite pleased when Alex came in. But from I guess from your perspective, I come to you on this, Pete. Like, what was when you saw Alex Neil, Millwall, what you know of us, and you know, similar things to what I asked George in terms of the fit? Did you look at that and go, yeah, that makes sense, that's logical, I can see why Alex Neil would be interested in that?
Yeah, I could really, for the same reasons George just said. The only thing for me was, I think you touched upon, you know, he's very much settled up here in the north, and like George said, he did travel back from Sunderland. He said in many interviews that his family and his children are well settled in the area. So on that side of it, I was a little bit surprised. But in terms of the club and the fit, not surprised at all. And like George said, he wants something that he can go into where, you know, there's a bit of a dangle of the carrot of this club is going places with a bit more structure and additional players and all the rest of the stuff that comes with that. But he is a really, really good manager. And I think all I would say to the Millwall fans is, as with any new manager, you've just got to give him time, because he's not going to walk into that club and work magic over the next 12 months. If you can see progression over the next 12 months, I think you've had a good season despite wherever you finish. And he was with us for 4 years, and we were probably, like I say, a couple of players short of doing something quite special. And not surprised at all that he's gone there. I think he'll do really, really well. With the backing of the fans, and if he can get the backing of the club financially in terms of getting in who he wants to fit his style of play, then you've got a cracking manager, and he's only he's 41, I think he is. So he's a young manager, really.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly don't look it, but yeah, he's very young.
It's 4 years at Preston.
There's something in the air up there. I think I agree with what you're saying. And you touched on something there about him getting in the players that he needs, and we've gone to a slightly different model in the last, probably not, I was about to say last 12 months. It's probably even shorter than that, where we have a director of football. They're in charge of the recruitment, and then we have a head coach. No, actually, it's a little bit more than 12 months. And Alex Neil was coming in that capacity. He technically won't be the person that goes out and signs players. To tell you gents the truth, I think one of the reasons that Neil Harris left, it's led to believe, don't know, was because he wasn't on board with that model. He wanted to manage the club. He wanted to have more of a say in the recruitment. So, does that surprise you that Alex Neil is happy to come into that kind of environment where he is away from it? And I guess the other thing as well is, I guess I'm trying to decouple the Alex Neil, the tactician, the coach, the motivator on the pitch, the person that sets up the patterns of play, versus the guy that's going to go out and say, right, I want to sign Emil Reese. I want to, and some of the players that he brought into your club. I'm just trying to get a sense of that from you.
I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't have a significant say of the players that he wants. He won't go into a job and leave the signings to a director of football or to anyone else. He just wouldn't do it because it wouldn't work. And I don't think the model works anywhere.
No comment.
but yeah, there will have been some sort of agreement, I'm sure, that he will either recommend a player or recommend several players, and maybe the director of football will come up with, whatever fits best financially or whatever. But I can't see him being distanced from those signings at all. I think he will have an input somewhere along the way, and there's not a chance that he would have gone into a club where someone else signs his players.
Yeah, and if anything, it gives me a little bit of comfort that, because there was talk that Neil Harris couldn't work with the director of football, Steve Gallen is the chap's name. But so it gives me a level of comfort that Alex Neil feels that he can. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come in and taken the job. Question to you, George: is there any? We know that in football, managers and players can be quite loyal to each other. Are there any players you think that were either maybe even still at Preston, or players that during his tenure that you think that Alex Neil would potentially come back in for and try and bring them to Millwall?
I was thinking about this the other day, actually, and there's nobody really sprung to mind because they've all kind of moved on in terms of they were young, hot properties going upwards and probably on the way down now, really. I thought Alan Brown would obviously be an obvious one, but he's gone to Sunderland and they're flying, so he's got a 2-year contract left there, I think, in the summer, so don't think that'd be possible, really. Potentially, but that'd be a struggle to get him out of there. Callum Robinson is probably not, though. He's like 29, 30 now. Best stage probably behind him. Reese, potentially. He signed, obviously he was there when he signed Reese. He's running out of contracts at Preston. And he's a threat at the level, but again, not sure he's really the type he'd be going for. So, yeah, probably not the answer you want, but there's nobody really sticking out to me. I guess Ryan Ledson's kind of a Millwall player, but I think with respect to him, Alex Neil might be after a little bit better than that.
No, you've not seen the talent down at Millwall, George. No, I'm being discrediting to some of our players. That's not true. There's a couple of players that I think you're right. It's around timing, because we've embarked on this new model, but as part of this new model, we're signing much younger players. I think Gary Rowett, when he was manager at Millwall, had a similar, I guess, in terms of output and results to Alex Neil at Preston. We were always bubbling around just outside the playoffs. We never just made it. Come to the last game of the season, we'd almost get there. But one of the challenges with where Gary Rowett has sort of left the club is that we recruited for there and now. We didn't recruit for the long term. So we've had a real switch of strategy, and we're now trying to sign younger, up-and-coming players. We just blew our transfer record in the summer, signing a 19-year-old Serbian lad that no one had ever heard of for €3 million, which is very, 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 very un-Millwall-like. One player, though, that wouldn't fit the model, but I know that Alex Neil loves because he's talked about him a lot and he signed him from many. I think he took him to... I'm sure he took him to Stoke, was Ben Pearson. What's your thoughts on him? Because he seemed to be like the best player in the Championship, or the best midfielder in the Championship at times, and then his career sort of dwindled off.
I think going down south to Bournemouth softened him up a little bit. He stopped tackling, but no, he was amazing money for us, Pete. Yeah. But he's had a horrible year with injuries, I think, hamstring wise. So I think Alex Neil would probably be very wary of that. But I mean, if there's any kind of sniff that he can get Pearson back to the levels he showed at Preston, I think he's still only 29, 30. So potentially have a look. And Ben Davis just sprung to mind as well, who's on loan at Birmingham. Don't know how much he's playing there, but I think he's got 1 year left at Rangers. He's gone on loan to Birmingham. I don't think he's really in the picture at Rangers, and he's a terrific left-footed centre-back. So maybe someone he'd have a look at. But again, you've got to convince him to go down to London, which isn't not appealing, but it's a big change for Davis. I think he's always been up north kind of thing. So yeah, maybe those two. They were the two outstanding players during Neil's time here.
They were, and that leads me nicely to my next question, which is you didn't get a lot of money for either of those players, and you probably should have got more. So would love to hear. Yeah, let's start with that actually before I get on to the next question. From an outsider looking in, I think you got, if transfer marks to be believed, about £2 million for the pair of them, or just over. So it wasn't a lot. What happened there?
It's a whole new show, that, isn't it, George?
They're probably worth 20 million combined, them two at the time. Genuinely, probably 10 each. But obviously, I think they maybe sold it that I've one more season with us. They both had 12 months left, and Preston had just finished 9th. So come on, give us 1 more year, we'll have a real push. And then can't remember the timing in terms of COVID and stuff, but then I think it became hard to try and sell them because nobody had money. So they're in the last 12 months. They weren't going to sign again. And it was a real mess. Yeah, I think that Preston will regret that for a long time because that like I say, serious money those two were worth at that time.
Ben came out and said that if he'd have been offered something the season before, then he would have signed, but he wasn't. And like many clubs in the league, and in the Premier League, we leave contract negotiations to the last minute. I mean, you can't make players sign if they don't want to speak while they're under contract. But with players like that, we would have liked to have hoped that we would have put something on the table that was enough to stay. And I don't think, from what he said, without speaking numbers, it wouldn't have taken much more than where he was already at. And so we lost, like George said, we lost 2 quality players.
I feel like I've hit a nerve, so I'll move on.
Alex Neil's face when I brought that back up in that interview after he left was like, it's like he went back in time, because at the time in his interviews then he was like, because there was 4 of them out of contract, Brown and Johnson were at the same time. His 4 best players were all had 6 months, and he just looked like broken. So yeah, bad one.
Talk to me about that interview then, George. Like, so you did an interview with him. When was that?
It was May last year, I think. Yeah, he obviously left Stoke in December, and I managed to get him in May. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it looked from start to finish really from his time at Preston. If I ever move on to do something else work-wise, that was the one thing I wanted to do, really. Go and talk to him about that time, and I managed to do it. So I was really, really glad he gave us his time. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. And any anecdotes from that you'd love to share that could be relevant to the Millwall fans?
anecdotes. Leave it with me, and I'll come back by the end of the episode. I'll get the piece up. But it was a really honest, open chat. I think if anyone wants to go and listen, he'd come across particularly well.
Yeah, no, we'll. Is it recorded then? Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be on Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll link to it in the show from this, George, so we can certainly do that. So that'd be fantastic, mate. One of the other things I'll come to you for this, Pete. So it sounds similar in the sense that Millwall need to become a better selling club, and what I mean by that is not lose your best players for next to nothing. We had a very similar outcome with Jed Wallace that he ended up going for free to West Brom, and we need to get better at that. We have hopefully secured 7 million for Zian Fleming, which I'm sure you're pleased doesn't play for us anymore because he always used to score against you. But it's looking increasingly likely that Romain Esse, who incredible talent, will go and play many games in the Premier League, I'm sure, is about to leave us for anywhere between 10 and 15 million. So we're definitely getting that way, which is good, and we've got to. Obviously, that starts with the academy. So, Pete, I know you've been in and around the academy at Preston. Any kind of stories or thoughts on Alex Neil's involvement in the academy, how he looks to work with those with those areas, and how he looks to develop players, and just anything you can share on that.
Yeah, I think it was quite open in saying if they're good enough, then they'll play. So there were no barriers to anyone in the academy getting into the first team. And you've got to have it away from the manager. You've got to have it in your club structure that is one of your income streams, if you will, that you are going to look to produce players from the academy. So it starts at the top of the club, really. If the progressive is to get players through and potentially sell players from your academy or bring them in the first team to, be full timers, then he is more than on board with that. And like I say, if they're good enough, then he's quite happy to play them.
And would he come and spend time like observing them and bring them into the training of the first team and that kind of thing as well? And
not so much coming down himself, but like in any club, the first team manager will have a good relationship with the academy manager, and obviously that, as long as that communication is good and both ways, then he will know exactly who is close and who isn't. And like I say, he's more than willing to put players on the bench and give them game time if they're looking like they're going to be able to play at the level.
Yeah, and I think that's probably another reason for like the attraction from Millwall side towards Alex Neil, because he does, when I look at it, he looks like a good personal fit in terms of he's an honest, hardworking guy. Like I think he'll resonate with the Millwall fans. Number two, he'll play a style that I think will work, which you keep me honest here, but it's quite front foot, aggressive. You go after the ball, you try and play attacking. Yes, what you might not have in quality, you'll make up for in effort, which again is what Millwall like. And then he does have a bit of a success record in developing and also selling players. So if I look at some of the sales from yourself, you got 9 million, I think, or roughly for Jordan Hugill, which I've always liked Jordan Hugill and I'd have loved him at Millwall, but 9 million or whatever the fee was that he went to West Ham, I think you did quite well out of that. So that's one of the players that got sold. I think you sold Greg Cunningham for 3 million plus. What role did Alex have in that, in terms of developing those players and making them worth those fees that they went on to demand?
It was like George said, when the players stepped onto the pitch, they knew the roles, and that's so important because it just gives them the confidence and the freedom to just go and play. And I don't think it was anything more exciting than exactly that, just giving the players the confidence that they are good enough. They all knew what the strategy would be each game, and the formation was pretty rigid, but he is happy to change that in game if it needed to. But yeah, I think the players just loved working with him, and I think I've mentioned it to you before, but he watches so many football games, and he's quite open with that he is always at a game somewhere if he's not managing or whatever. Just learning, and he's, like I say, he's quite open with that it's a bit cheesy, but a student of the game, so to speak, and he brings that back to his training sessions and his tactics, and again, that just comes down to the players as well. So they just play with confidence and freedom.
It's funny you say about he's always at games, because there was, the rumour mill was starting to say that Alex Neil would be the new Millwall head coach, and then we were away at Norwich and he wasn't there, and he was at the Preston game, and all of a sudden it was right. It can't be happening. He's not at the Millwall Norwich game, which when you think about it, it's probably the right thing. You don't want to distract everyone before any announcement was made. So, I thought that was interesting.
Didn't fancy the drive to Norwich, did he? Couldn't be bothered.
No, I don't blame him on Boxing Day to see Millwall get battered. So no one can blame him. George, I'll ask you this one. So it's an interview, as I said, with Gab Sutton, and in that he talked a bit about he had such an emotional attachment to the Preston side, and he talked about how the conversation was around how that can be a double-edged sword. It's brilliant because by having that bond and that tight knit, it almost enables you to motivate them and to get them to, to where they were and maybe punching above their weight. But at the same time, he said that when that team started to break up, because he was so emotionally invested in those individuals and that team, he therefore struggled maybe to go out and build the next one. And he openly said that. So I guess I'm segueing into my next question, which is a tough one, by the way, which is, sounds like a great guy. No one's perfect. What are his flaws?
Probably, yeah, you've touched on it there, but I think he struggled when that team got ripped apart to accept that the journey was kind of done, and he had to kind of overnight in January, right, I've got a brand new team and I've got to work with those. So I think he might have stripped that back a bit, though, that emotion and that kind of heart on the sleeve side. I think he's trying to be a bit more. I watched his first interview with you guys, and I thought it was really good, but I didn't think there was any too strong statements or promises. I thought it was quite level-headed. And I don't think this is really a criticism, but I don't think he ever was too kind of front and centre in front of the fans, trying to build a connection. Of like, he was kind of giving it all to the players. And some people didn't like that, but I thought you can go too far the other way. And I think he was always kind of just cracked on with his job. Didn't really bound over to the away end after a win and do fist pumps and stuff like that. And some people love it, but he's not really that type. But flaws wise, tactically, I think if you're 1-0 down, I think he struggles sometimes to break a team down. So that might be something you notice. I think that was a bit of a downfall here by the end. There's a lot of naff 1-0s and stuff where we didn't really have many chances to get back in the game. We weren't bad, we just couldn't get back in the match. So I mean, he might be looking for a bit of 1v1 quality out wide to break low blocks down and stuff. But yeah, not too many flaws. He's top manager, as we said.
Lovely. No, nice. And you know what, you said something there that I kind of picked up on. When we've had managers in the past, I feel like in their first interviews, they said things that they feel that they should just say. They have to say, especially with Millwall fans. Oh, Millwall's a horrible place to come and it's unique and the fans are this and all that. Alex didn't. He didn't say any of that, and I actually quite like that because you could tell it was authentic. He wasn't given a script and like, you've got to say this, this and this. And to your point, I don't think Millwall fans would ever want a manager that comes at the end and does all this, and it just wouldn't work. But in terms of not working, Pete, why do you think it didn't work for him at Stoke? Now, I know it hasn't worked for a lot of managers at Stoke, but it felt like it really didn't for Alex, especially towards the back half of his tenure there. Any thoughts from you on why you think that was the case?
I think you can probably link it back to what George said about his troubles. I say troubles. He actually had it was quite plain sailing in terms of his players. We didn't really have a massive problem until the main body of the team was ripped apart, and there were no replacements. So, when he was just left in limbo, or at the opposite end of the spectrum at Stoke, he ended up signing 20 players, or was it something similar to that?
18, something like that.
18, yeah.
A lot of them got injured after he signed them as well.
Yeah. So again, it comes back to not knowing your best team. And he said that in an interview towards, I don't know if it was with you, George, or it might have been Sky, but he said towards the end of his time at Preston that if he asked me what my best 11 is, I'm not going to Scooby-Doo. And that was quote. So he just didn't have a clue. And I think he'd lost all heart at that point, because he is quite an emotional guy, and he came to us and wanted to stay for 4 or 5 seasons and get us promoted. But I think once that emotion just kind of tipped over and he kind of realised this is now getting impossible because I just don't have the tools to do what I need to do. That's kind of where it fell down with us. But relate that to Stoke, and he just had too many options. I didn't know what to expect when we went there and we won. I expected a really tough game, but there were just players all over the place, and it just wasn't. It didn't look like an Alex Neil team at all. So, again, come back to being patient, giving him time to get his players in the style of play across to the players that he does have, and I think you'll have a great time with him.
And I think you're right. He does need time, and I feel like he likes that. He likes projects, which was why it was so surprising that he left Sunderland to go to Stoke. And it's not a concern for me really, because for someone to come knocking on the door for a Millwall manager, it says we're doing really, really, really well. So I'm not that bothered. But did it surprise you? Not lack of loyalty, because you can read into these things all over the place. And Alex has come out and said that he asked Sunderland for a new contract because he got promoted. They said no. So, he went to Stoke. But do you have any thoughts on that, Pete, in terms of his loyalty?
No, not really. I mean, I don't know why you would leave Sunderland to go to Stoke. I mean, Sunderland's a massive club. And yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I don't know what was the contract situation there. Was he coming towards the end of his contract at Stoke when he left? At Sunderland. I can't quite remember now.
I think he just wanted to renegotiate it. He in an interview I heard, he coined it as similar as saying, if you sign a striker and they score 20 goals and get you promoted, they're going to knock on your door and say, exactly. I'd like a new contract. So that is reflective of my stock, essentially. And that's kind of the comparison he drew. And he said that Sunderland weren't willing to do that. And obviously Stoke made all these promises and whatever. And that was what made him move across. But I don't know. There's always two sides to every story, isn't there? And
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, the only thing I could think would be just for security, because he's very much a family man, and if Stoke were offering him X amount of years and Sunderland weren't, then maybe that's what he's thought. But I suppose the only surprising thing is that it was Stoke, not dissing Stoke, but like I say, he likes to go into somewhere with a project, and Stoke was a bit surprising, to be honest.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how Mark Robbins does, who is now at Stoke, isn't he? So,
Chris, just on that whole thing, he turned down West Brom while he was Preston manager, and everyone thought he was 100% going to make that move. And Stoke came in for him while he was here as well. Didn't end up going. I think he was really tempted in the end. Said he loved it at Preston and just thought it wasn't the right time to go. So he's not the kind of person to just jump ship, I don't think. I think at that time, Sunderland, I got the impression behind the scenes maybe wasn't his cup of tea. And he knew he'd get paid well at Stoke. He'd get backed with money in the transfer windows. And he probably backed himself to go there and do really well. But I think if he had his time again, obviously Sunderland was like a young team, just come up. And he probably maybe thinks I would have been better off staying there. But yeah, he turned down Stoke once. I don't think he wanted to turn down again, would be my guess.
And then George, sticking with yourself, mate. He had quite a long time out of football before he obviously has taken the Millwall job. Do you think that was by choice? Do you think that he was approached for other opportunities, but it didn't feel right, or like what's your take on that?
Yeah, it was a year, wasn't it? So quite a long time, really. I think he got linked with Cardiff, Hearts, and I think he got quite far down with Birmingham, the Birmingham job. So I think he'll have just been waiting for the right thing to come along, really. But no, there was interest in him. I don't think it's easy getting back in these days. There's clubs going for like under 23 managers looking abroad and stuff. So you've got to really wait for your opportunity. So that's why I think he'll have been hesitant to pick the right thing to go into. And like we said, I think you'll probably see Millwall somewhere he can be for 3-4 years and gradually push for it. But yeah, no, he'd be glad to get back in for sure. It's been a year again, hasn't it? So
hopefully he's got that hunger back, if you like, after whatever happened for him at Stoke. And I think managers like Alex Neil and maybe similar to the guy in charge now for you at Preston, they're not a dying breed, but they're almost undervalued. You're right in that everyone's going for these ticky-tacky style managers and more like coaches. But actually, there's something to be said for these stable managers that are able to keep clubs like us, financially stable, in the Championship, mid-table. For me, I just want to turn up, see my team, give it all out on the pitch. If we can make way towards the playoffs, great. We're already playing the most exciting league in the world. Would I like 1 year in the Premier League before I die? Of course. But I'm also a realist, being a Millwall fan, so we'll see. Gents, I guess just closing out on this, George, I'll come back to you and that interview you did. I don't know if there's any sort of personal anecdotes from that interview or just from any conversations you've had with Alex Neil that you'd like to share.
Trying to think, really. I was going to mention the getting too emotionally invested and stuff. Well, that was quite interesting. But no, a lot of it, to be honest, mate, sorry. A lot of it was specific to North End, so I don't know if Millwall fans want to hear about all that stuff. I think he loved Kiefer Moore at Preston. He tried to sign him 4 times, so obviously
we've tried to sign him 4 times as well.
Have you? So maybe he'll finally unite with Kiefer Moore at the Den. But yeah, he's a player he's loved for a long time. But I think, I think going back to earlier, I didn't comment on it when you were talking about behind the scenes and stuff, and I fully agreed with Pete that he really has strong thoughts on how our club should be run and what should be going on behind the scenes. So while he'll kind of embrace being left to his own devices on the grass because he loves working with players and stuff, tactically, he's not just going to sit there and let someone sign all his players if he don't want them. So yeah, I think maybe that's more of an image thing for Millwall and to work kind of moving with the times. But yeah, he's not going to sit there and just let other people make massive decisions like that. He'll be fully in them conversations and giving his thoughts because he knows about all players and stuff. But yeah, I'd expect to bring in a mix of experience and youth because he really values players who know what they're doing and been there and done it.
Awesome. Who's he brought in terms of assistants?
So Martin Canning, yeah, was he with Preston? I don't know if he was.
No,
was he?
He wasn't at Preston. I think was he with him at Norwich?
He was with him at both Sunderland and Stoke and Hamilton. But
right, so before,
when he became Norwich manager, Martin Canning became Hamilton manager. So that's why he didn't come with him at Norwich. Who was his assistant at Preston then?
Frankie McAvoy.
Yeah, Frankie.
He had him at Norwich and he became our manager for a little bit. But not working together anymore, I don't think. I think Frankie's at Hearts' academy. Might have lost his job there, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there was a few sort of rumours going around. Well, I say rumours, links, shall we say, that Paul Gallagher was going to join Alex Neil's coaching. Obviously, a stalwart of Alex Neil's side at Preston. So we'll have to see how that transpires because we're in desperate need of an attacking coach. We've scored 4 goals in 8 games. So we don't score enough goals. Pete, any final thoughts from you or any sort of personal anecdotes of Alex Neil that you want to share or anything at all, mate?
I think, like I said at the beginning, as long as the Millwall fans give him time and back him, you know, you've got a really good manager, and like Joe said, you're not going to get the big claps after a win and all that kind of stuff. He's a very much, we'll do the celebrating at the end of the season kind of thing. It's down to work, and he's like that game by game, and that might come across as a bit not arrogant, but maybe like he's a bit closed off to the fans. But he's not at all. He's just so focused on his football, and you know, that's the main concentration for him. And yeah, as long as he's backed by the club in terms of getting his players in, then, you know, I'll be really interested to see where he takes the club.
I don't think he likes flying, Chris. So if you get into Europe, you might be struggling.
Oh, there's a problem I'd love to worry about, mate. I'm just worried about beating Dagenham and Redbridge in the FA Cup on Monday. But well, look, I mean, I for one couldn't be happier that Alex Neil is the new man at Millwall. I think, you know, I never wanted Neil Harris to go. Massive Neil Harris fan, but I think without the candidates that are available, I think it was a perfect fit. And I think talking to you guys have just reaffirmed that. So massive thank you to you both for coming on. For those listening, it's Friday night. So these two gents have given up their Friday night to talk to me about Alex Neil. If you are new to the channel, then please do like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Everything we're doing is being donated to cancer research. So you know that even if you can't stand Millwall, you know you're contributing towards a good thing. So, gents, for one final time, thank you both for coming on.
Pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
And wish you all the best for the rest of the season, chaps.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Top man.
And as always, bye for now.